Hello! How is everybody doing? Tell me the truth, because I am on the verge of losing my mind. Welcome everybody on the first episode of this new mini-series about plans for work if we ever get back to work, or plans for beginners. In this mini-series, I'm gonna aim to show you on each episode a different varieties of plants that you can either easily bring to work and take care of, or plants that you can easily start with. What are my criteria to decide, to advise you which plant is good for the office or which plant is good for beginners? First one, the light. Most of us work in a very dark office, and you therefore need a plant that can survive with very low light. However, know this, a plant that can survive in low light is not a plant that thrives in low light, and no plant needs no light. If you're in a room where you have absolutely no window and the artificial lighting is very poor, no plant is going to survive in there. Criteria number 2, can the plant take a little bit of neglect? The plants I'm going to decide to show you in these episodes are plants that I have tried myself as a beginner and that I know they can take a lot of neglect. They cannot be watered on schedule and they will still be okay and not die on you. Third criteria, the budget. Is the plant expensive or not? Of course, I do not recommend you to bring any expensive or rare plants in your workspace, because somebody might steal it, or you can find yourself not able to access your workplace, as in right now, and therefore it will be a pretty expensive cost for an office plant to die. And we're gonna start today with the Pothos. The Pothos name usually gathers two families of plants, Epipremnums and Scindapsus. Even though these two species are usually very confused with each other, there are a couple of ways that you can tell the difference. It is mainly through the flowering process. The seeds of the flowers are very different. However, those species of plants rarely bloom inside. There is another way to tell the difference between the two, and that is in the evolution process of the leaf and the overall plant. Both of these species are epiphytes, meaning that their goal in life is to find something to attach themselves to and in the long run become independent from the soil. How does it work? Well, as the plant evolves, it usually tries to attach itself to a tree. That is the most common ways that these plants evolve. They will start to grow aerial roots. These roots will, with time, if the conditions are right, start to grow and attach themselves to the tree. The plant will still be able to absorb all the humidity that it needs to continue its process of growing and going further and upper in the tree, which is where you can start to be able to differentiate the two families, the Epipremnum and the Scindapsus. As the Epipremnum enters its stage of epiphyte and continue his life process and evolution process, the leaves will not only start to get bigger and bigger and bigger, but they will also start to develop fenestrations. For Scindapsus, however, it hasn't, to my knowledge, been proved that they start to develop fenestrations, meaning that the plant is going to carry on evolving but just having bigger and bigger leaves as it grows up in the tree or whatever surface that it's attached to. This is the normal natural process of the plant in the wild. However, these plants are very often used as office plants because they are very easy to care for and they don't require a lot of light or a lot of maintenance. Most of them can go by with a couple of weeks or even a month sometimes without watering, which make them pretty good office plants. If you decide to leave your plant as a hanging plant, meaning that you let all the stems fall down rather than go up, the leaf size are likely to become smaller or to just never evolve, but they will, however, look like very, very nice curtains of leaves. Now, the most common pothos that we all think of when we hear the word pothos is this one. It's actually the Epipremnum Aureum, which is commonly known as the golden pothos because it has yellow variegation most of the time. Of course, sometimes it loses its variegation, but it comes back with time. It depends on the light that it gets and also the good or not genetics of the plant that you get. These Epipremnum, if you attach them to a moss pole, they will start to eventually develop bigger leaves, and then in the end, if you're lucky enough, however, I don't think anyone has ever obtained these results growing these plants indoor, you can end up with big leaves with big fenestrations. But I need to warn you that getting fenestrations from these plants indoor is relatively hard. I've never seen one ever having these. This is the easiest plant that you can ever get. It can go by with its life without water almost. You need to water it maybe like once every 3 weeks and it will still be happy and survive and keep on growing. And as you can see, it just trails like crazy. This plant is usually used as a trailing plant that you can put on a shelf or on a desk, and it will just attach itself to the wall and just carry on growing all around the room, or you can decide to have it as a beautiful curtain of leaves. This is actually the best plant for beginners. So if you're out to buy your very first plant and you need a plant that it's not going to cost you a lot of money, these can, I think I bought this one for like €5 or something. They are very replaceable. They can take a lot of neglect. It is a perfect plant in my opinion for very beginners who are still trying to understand how taking care of a plant works. You also have the marble queen Pothos, which is actually Scindapsus aureus, I think, but anyway, it's in the Scindapsus family. So this is not Epipremnum, meaning that this plant will actually either trail and it will be perfectly fine. It will live its life perfectly fine as a training plant, but it also wants to attach itself to something, and if you let it do so, it will eventually start growing bigger and bigger leaf as the plant enters its epiphyte stage. These plants are very easy, very beautiful to see. It has beautiful stains and marbling of white and green, which can actually, you know, bring in a little bit of fantasy in your workspace. They are very easy to take care of. This one actually continued to grow through the whole winter. Mind you, it was under a grow light, which is why you can see some browning damage here. It's actually because the white part, I think there was too much light for the white part. One that is more likely to also bring a little bit of light in your workspace is the neem Pothos, which is actually from the Scindapsus family as well. It is a perfect plant for trailing. As you see, it goes from very yellowy neon green in juvenile leaves until a bit darker, but still quite neon green. It is a very bright color of green actually on this one, and I really love it because when you mix this with a darker foliage, you can see that it makes the whole plant pop out, and I really like it because I think it brings a little bit of sun inside of the room. It is an unusual color and it's just a very happy plant. Now you will see that with time, you will see sometimes evolutions of the plants. You can see that here this new leaf has started to develop variegations, which is actually super nice. I actually have all these plants over my fridge in my kitchen, and they don't get a lot of light, and you see they just carry on growing. So, and they're very easy plants to propagate as well. So you might during springtime you can just cut one of the stem and put it in water, and as it develops roots, you just you know, put it back inside of the pot and you will have a fuller plant. This plant actually loves to be trimmed, as in if you want it to be fuller, you just need to cut the trailing stems, and then the plant will start developing new stems from upper in the plant, and you will have overall a very full plant. But this is a good plant for trailing as well. Last but not least, and this plant has taken a little bit of a journey. It's a learning curve experience. It took me a while to understand what this plant actually needs. So please don't mind the horrible state that it's at. But it will actually tell you itself how much it can survive. This is the satin Pothos, or Scindapsus pictus. As you can see, it is very dark green. The leaves are very, very thick, and it has some sparkly, silvery variegation on it. You can actually find this plant under different names and different variegations, but the base is always the same. The shape of the leaf are always like that, and the variegation, the silvery variegation, might vary according to which plant you're buying. As you can see, this one has suffered a lot under my care. I had never had this plant before, and I was just experimenting with it. What I found is that this plant overall doesn't like to be overwatered, which is, I think, the perfect criteria for an office plant, as in we often don't really have time to look after them all the time. So it will be able to take a little bit of neglect. The way that you can tell it needs to be watered is that the leaves will start to curl a little bit, and that's when you know that the plant desperately needs water. I have lost a lot of the stems because of the overwatering, but as you can see, it is already starting to shoot new growth from the existing stem. And what I will do is just cut some of the stems next year probably, and just try to put them back in the pot and just make the plant look fuller. This plant can be also grown on a moss pole, and it will start to develop bigger and bigger leaf as it starts climbing. I saw one in my recent plant nursery tour that you might have seen before. I'm gonna link in there if you haven't seen it. It can grow huge. The leaves, however, usually stays about this big, and yeah, I think this plant is perfect for an office or a beginner actually. I had mine for €5, I think, on Paris. I usually buy my beginner plants in very big plant sales that happens in Paris every once in a while, where everything is super cheap. So I know that this one is actually becoming very popular in France right now, and you can now find it for a very reasonable price. That is it for the Pothos family. As you can see, I have 4 kinds myself. I've had them for a couple of months, sometimes a year or two. They've been doing great, despite all the neglect that they might have over my watch. I will, of course, come back with other families of trading plants. I really wanted to break down this little series in the genus of the plants, because I think it's always nice to come with a little bit of information. I really wanted to explain to you the epiphyte side of Pothos, because I think it's amazing that actually a golden Pothos can end up under the right condition, can end up looking like a little bit of a monster aurea, which I think is super cool. I know that recently the Epipremnum white variegated popped out everywhere on the internet, although it is selling for a very crazy price right now. I wouldn't advise you to take that as an office plant, but know that if you're a collector and you love Epipremnums, there is a white variegated version of the Epipremnum. That is it for the first episode of this mini-series about plants for the workspace and plants for beginners. I hope this was helpful, and I will see you next time for another episode. Bye bye!